First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
On the line right now, in regards to the eminent domain issue, Samantha, Colosimo, Testa. We've had a lot of Utica politics on over this garage issue, and Samantha's on the line right now. Good morning. Ooh.
Okay, sorry, that was Morse code for good morning.
Okay. Oh. Thank you. Right back at you. Okay. Well, that was fun.
Good morning, guys.
That was fun. Okay, so on this eminent domain issue, we've heard a lot. What I find interesting is we've heard a lot of talk from people within the city saying that, you know, maybe eminent domain is not the right move. They don't want to be a part of eminent domain when it comes to the parking garage. Yet, aren't there situations where the city has used eminent domain to take over property?
I mean, they have used it before. I mean, I sit on the Urban Renewal Agency for about 6 years, and I've never seen them use the eminent domain process.
Okay.
In regards for taking over a building.
But there is one. There is one in particular that is quite interesting, and I believe that's what you're talking about.
It is, and this is the Court Street property that, which was strange how it got, split up to begin with. So somebody owned 20%, and then the city foreclosed on 80%. But the biggest issue that I have with them doing the eminent domain process is they took the gentleman to court and claimed that they needed this parcel for economic development.
Okay.
Now, there's two sides to this. So when the city takes property over for foreclosure or eminent domain or whatnot, they actually go through the public bidding process, which makes the Urban Renewal Agency different, is they actually can go through the public bidding process, or they could choose who they're selling the parcel to based on who they think is the right tenant for that property. So Urban Renewal Agency is a separate entity from the city. Even the funds go back to the Urban Renewal Agency, and for the sale of the parcel. And then when the city does it, that goes back to the general fund. So it is a separate entity, but part of the city of Utica at the same time. So when they took Vincent Bailey, who owned that Court Street parcel, to court, they took him to court for that 20%. Now, I just find it strange. They wanted the parcel, and I understand wanting a whole parcel rather than just trying to subdivide that 80%.
Yeah.
So that's besides the point in this, and I understand why the city would want that.
If I can, initially when I was thinking you were talking about the 20%, I was confused because I was thinking it's someone who owned 20% of a property. But what you're saying is this is a person who owned, there's a parcel, and someone owns
one whole parcel. So he basically owned 20% of the entire building.
Okay, I see. So that is what it is. Okay, yeah. I was getting confused.
He purchased that back in 2018 for I think $40,000 or something along those lines.
Yep.
And was planning on having a tenant inside that parcel.
Okay, all right, got it.
So way back when I was on the council, there is actually a hallway, so to speak, above the building that connects the Street building that they're putting La Nostra in to that Court Street building.
Okay.
So when they actually lease that to the people that own that building for $1. So I found that strange that they would be leasing that parcel for $1 when they didn't even own that total parcel to the building. So it made me think that they were taking that eminent domain in order to sell it to those people.
Okay.
Which, at the end of the day, I guess. The problem that I have is that they never sat down with Vincent Bailey and said, listen, if we sell this building as an entire parcel, can we give you what profit we make off of 20%? So they went through court, the city paid for all those proceedings, or the Urban Renewal Agency or whatnot, paid for all those proceedings to take Vincent Bailey to court. Instead of just offering him that 20% if they were to sell that parcel on a contingency for whatever they sold the building for. So they took Vincent Bailey to court. They only paid him like $44,000 for that parcel. After he owned the building, had to go through court proceedings and whatnot. Now they're selling that building for $600,000. And if they were to sell that and just give him 20% of those proceedings without going to court and whatnot, I mean, he could have made a profit over $120,000 just by in good faith negotiations with the city. So I just didn't know what the biggest issue was. I heard that they needed it for a police station. I heard they needed it for, several other things. So I just didn't know what the big focus was on that particular parcel. So now that it's out for public bid through the Urban Renewal Agency and they could choose who they sell it to, it'll be interesting to see who that seller or who that buyer actually is.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, and I think that's the biggest problem that I have is, what was the point of the eminent domain process other than, wanting to own the 100% of the building? That makes sense. But I don't understand why they would have had such a problem to sell it to Vincent Bailey when he had offered the city $500,000 publicly, not officially on a piece of paper. But what is the issue of taking him to court for eminent domain just for that?
So
when there's so many other parcels inside the city that need attention that the city could utilize that for.
I didn't think you could. I didn't think you could take eminent domain because you wanted to sell a property. I thought it had to be for public good.
I guess that they claimed economic development reasons, and I don't know if I didn't read the whole entire court document, and I have everything, and I had skimmed through it. There's a lot of pages to read in regards to that particular parcel. Mm-hmm. But what I had read from the city is that they wanted it for economic development purposes, and as a city, you can go through eminent domain and really go through that process, and your reasoning could be economic development. So, and the court had
So I guess that came up during the that came up during the hospital project.
Right.
If you remember,
right.
the issue was you can't use eminent domain for a private construction project, and the argument has been, well, this is even though MVHS is its own entity, this is still a project for public good. And that's how the whole thing, I think, was sold. But this is kind of a unique situation. And oh, by the way, it looks like a situation where the city makes profit on the deal, right?
Well, and that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I didn't think the city was in the business of taking people to court to make a profit off of their.
No, to take their property away.
Their sale.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, the way the building was split up was strange anyways. How a building got subdivided 20 and 80 is beyond me. But,
yeah.
I guess it can happen, but
okay.
And to a different subject, I just want to say thank you guys because you guys broke that topic in regards to the hospital, the parking garage, and I think that it shed light on a lot of the situation. But and it's unfortunate that the mayor has to put blame on the council when they really had nothing to do with the negotiations and whatnot. And for the council to feel that they had to defend themselves, I thought was, totally wrong, blaming them that they needed an appetite when they, according to everybody that you talked to, they had nothing to do with the negotiations ever.
And it's interesting, too, because the letters that we received letters from that Jeff had received from the county executive's office. And it's letters, communication back and forth between the mayor and Tony Pacini. And so it shows that really there was negotiation going back and forth between the two of them. But it's funny, the mayor doesn't want to take the heat on any of this, so he says the council doesn't have the appetite.
It's always nice to blame the council when you can't. Yeah. But another person that's involved in this, and maybe not particularly involved with the negotiations, but I mean, we do have a chief financial officer inside the city, Bill Morehouse. I mean, and I haven't heard a peep out of him whether or not the city could afford it. And you would think that somebody with that knowledge and the financial background in the city would be speaking out on whether or not the city could afford it as well. So, I mean, there's a few elected officials inside the city that could bear responsibility in understanding who could make those payments to the city and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to check in with the former mayor. I mean, the future mayor. I mean, the comptroller. I'm sorry. What am I talking about?
I like Morris. I love the Morris code. That was the best. So
that was good.
It's the Morehouse code.
Yes, the Morehouse code.
The Morehouse code.
So, listen. Do you think 40%? Do you think 40% is fair? Should the city is that too much of an ask?
Well, and when I said it last time, when I said that the city had supported the hospital and the parking garage or whatnot, I did say that there was a problem with members on the council that didn't feel that 40% was a lot of money. So, and again, that's where it went back to the mayor had negotiated. They wanted the hospital project to move forward. There was other funding that they could have looked for. I mean, and again, a negotiation for a better deal could have happened on behalf of the city's part, but that was what they were given at the time. And according to them at the time, the city could have afforded that 40%.
Right.
So I don't know how you could go 4 years later and know that you have to budget for that, and that could have been a possibility that would have came up. the city can't claim poverty when they're announcing $1 million surpluses and, fund balances each and every year. It's sometimes you've got to put your money where your mouth is.
Right.
And I think in this particular case, back in 2017, when they said they could afford it, what happened from 2017 to 2021?
Right,
like I said, the city had just bonded $11.6 million for 3 parking garages. So I think the city needed to take a little responsibility in understanding that they had Kennedy Plaza Garage. That would have been their financial responsibility. And even I think if they talked to the county executive at the time and said, well, if we're building this one parking garage, why not put all the city's parking garages into this bond and then help us pay for that in totality? And then maybe that 40% contribution would make more sense in the end. So right. I think that you needed a better negotiator at the table on behalf of the city at the time, and it wasn't there. And I think that, through the pandemic and everything like that was a perfect storm for the city to say, well, listen, we can't afford it now. We don't want to pay that 40%.
Right.
So, again, right. A better negotiation could have happened on behalf of the city, and maybe we could have got a better deal out of all our parking garages, which would have made sense, you know what I mean, when you're bonding for parking garages, not just the Kennedy Plaza. So I thought when we talked about those discussions, if the county did a redistribution of sales tax dollars and the city got a little more of a beneficial monetary amount through our budget,
right.
then bonding that 40% would have made sense. But none of that happened. And again, we went through four years of building that's half built, and here we come at the last minute. I mean, it's embarrassing on behalf of the city to just not give any monetary amount and say that, we gave you $3 million for a parking garage that was already in the original MOA. That's not fair, and to me, that's just not good business.
All right.
And I had, and it's interesting you say that because even in subsequent conversations that I've had with council people after the fact that, they were open to maybe considering a 20 or a 30%, and I don't understand why there wasn't with this new council.
None of them say they are now. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, actually, that's another thing too. Like the council can say whatever they want until they have a negotiation, and me sometimes I think and just say stuff. I'm like, well, why don't they, make an announcement that they're going to sit down at a table with the city and the county and maybe some county legislators and some council members and really come up with a plan. I mean, because it's not fair for me to, as a resident of the city to sit back and say who was involved and understands the intricacies of what's going on with that hospital project to say, well, no one from the city can really ask them to come to a table and figure out, what would be, what would work. You know what I mean? And that never happened with anybody.
Well, it's over.
That's the biggest problem.
It's over now. The county's taking on the full responsibility. Yeah. All right, Samantha, I got to roll. Thank you. Appreciate it.
One more thing.
Guys. Yes.
There was $8 million in infrastructure funding. Did you have to approve that?
I don't know what I don't know what that is. Because
okay.
according to what they said yesterday, it was DRI grants DRI grants and ESD grants. So I don't know what the $8 million.
Okay.
I've never seen it. I've never seen the council approve it. So I'm not 100% sure what they were talking about in regards to that.
The mayor said $3 million, and $8 million. It was 3, and 8. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not sure what that was at all. To be quite honest with you, so I don't ever remember approving that, and I don't know if that was something that happened from now through the pandemic. I mean, they all get along great. You would think that everyone gets along great when City Hall's been closed for a year and a half. So
yeah. Okay, Samantha, we appreciate it. Thank you. And Samantha Colosimo Testa is running for council at large. Thank you. Interesting. We hear more from her than we hear from the current council members. And we do appreciate that.